Hello everybody and welcome to Andrew's Theories, the video series where I pretty much come up with strange and unusual theories and let you know what I think. Still trying to come up with a decent catchphrase for this series. I'm trying my damnedest, seriously. But anyway, I've been watching some Dragon Ball episodes ever since DBZA Season 3 finished. It's got me nostalgic for the good old days. And yes, while I've been watching Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, and Dragon Ball Super clips, I will never touch GT so long as I live, I honestly love the series, with the exception of GT and Kai. Both, the storytelling and the artwork is wonderful, with the exception of GT and Kai. And I honestly just adore the entire world building that this series has given, with the exception of GT and Kai. That being said, I kind of have an issue with something, and it kind of has a major thing that, okay, look, I'm just going to come out and say it. Akira Toriyama really screwed up. Look, I know that the man forgets a lot of things, but this is something that's actually kind of major, and I think was pointed out by at least a couple of YouTubers and some other people, but I definitely now noticed it and definitely have the proof to back it the hell up. So let's go back to the beginning. Back when Dragon Ball Super was introducing the Goku Black arc, and Future Trunks was basically teased to us to be shown, we saw him escaping Goku Black, who he tried taking down and failed miserably. I mean, I gotta give him credit, he put up one hell of a fight, but yeah, he still got his ass handed to him on a silver platter. But what bothers me is the setting for this. Now, we were told through backstory that Zamasu used the time ring and went to Trunks' past and basically screwed it more than it was. This was after he took Goku's body and killed Goku. After he swapped bodies with Goku and then killed Goku in his body and had Goku's body. Yeah, not exactly a brilliant idea there, jackass. But sure, we'll go with that. But my issue is the body of Goku that he stole was technically the body that Goku had after defeating Majin Buu. Because Goten was there in the flashback. That's how Chi-Chi found out that Goku changed and became Zamasu, and they were all murdered by Zamasu, which pissed off Goku into one of my favorite scenes when he just back punched Zamasu like it was nothing after punching Goku Black into the building. He just backhanded Zamasu like it was nothing. Like, yep, I'm pissed. Get out of my way. That was the best part, honestly. I still love that. I can still see that scene in my head, and I love it. But the issue that I have here is that if we're talking the timeline of Future Trunks, Goku wouldn't have existed anymore. Because in Future Trunks' timeline, Goku died prior to the androids arriving. He died due to the heart virus, which was the entire reason for Trunks to go back to the past to give Goku the medicine so he could fight the androids, thus creating the skewed timeline that we have. For any of you that have ever seen Back to the Future, you should remember Doc Brown's explanation in Back to the Future Part 2 when he said that, imagine this line as the time-space continuum. Here's 1955, here's 1985, and here's 2015. Somewhere here in the future, old Biff must have gone back into the past, given himself the book, and sent us into the skewed 1985. Same prospect with this, only slightly different. See, instead of having the skewed timeline, which you figure we would have had after the conclusion of Dragon Ball Z's Cell Saga and everything else included with it, you figured, okay, we technically have the, alternate timeline, which is what we're in. So, how did Trunks effectively go back to his dystopian future? He wouldn't have. He would have gone back to a future where Goku would have survived. So, yes, I can hear somebody say, but he survived. But that means that Goku would have been there to fight Buu. Gohan would still be alive. The Z-Fighters would all still be there. Majin Buu would have basically gone to town and everything else, and Here's where the problems start to mount up. Now, Akira Toriyama, you make some wonderful content. God bless you for your talent and everything else. I mean, holy crap. I think it's amazing. Honestly, you are one of the greatest manga artists that have ever lived. I mean, wholeheartedly, you are the greatest. But this is a major issue because instead of Trunks being a time traveler, he's technically a dimension traveler. Yeah, let me explain. See, with time travel, you're going back to a set point in time. Think of time as a circle. That it starts and ends at the same spot. It keeps going around and around and around ad infinitum in a gigantic circular motion. The ebb and flows, you will. Imagine like a standard clock. For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, it's an automatic clock that has a dial, hands, and a second hand. Analog, basically. Think of an analog clock. Clockwise motion would pretty much be the circle at which time flows. Reversing this flow would be altering the course of time, therefore going in a counterclockwise motion. You will eventually go back to your original time once the time starts to resync itself. Now, that being said, you could effectively say that Trunks was returning to his dystopian future when he returned back to his point in time when it was set. But because of the events that are taking place in Super, I can prove it wrong. See, in Dragon Ball Super, Mai exists. Okay? She would not have existed if this was future Trunks from Dragon Ball Z. Because by this point in time, Emperor Pilaf's gang was pretty much non-existent. There was no proof that they wished themselves to be young again, and honestly, none of the events that led to that would have happened. So she would have technically been, I would say, around Bulma's age, if not possibly older. I mean, there's not really nobody else to compare her to that I can remember from Dragon Ball to compare her to now in Dragon Ball Z. So, yeah. Think of it like, think like Chi-Chi at the end of Dragon Ball Z. You know, older, stuff like that. Or Bulma at the end of Dragon Ball Z. She'd be around that age in future Trunks' timeline now. So, you see the concept. Plus, the fact that there are no Dragon Balls means that they could not have wished themselves younger. And, honestly, that's the whole issue. So, with future Mai being there in Super for future Trunks' timeline, basically her being his love interest, I mean, let's face it, I'm happy future Trunks found somebody. He needed somebody to make him happy because he just freaking did. I just can't tell you how much he needed somebody. But none of the events line up. And yes, I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but here's the thing. If you're dimension traveling, here's the thing. Now, I've already explained time travel, it being basically a circle. Dimension travel is you taking that circle and expanding it into a cylinder. Now, basically what that is instead of using the cylinder or using the circular motion, you're now in a cylinder, meaning that there are multiple circles for different dimensions that are flowing in that same realm of existence. Think of it like flipping a quarter. If you flip a coin up in the air, it either comes up heads or tails. There's another dimension where you'll get tails and one where you'll get heads. There's actually a proper word for this called the divergent realities theory. But basically, think of it this way. Trunks didn't go back to the past. He went to an alternate dimension, where in that dimension, Goku, Gohan, and all the others were fine, and the events played out slightly differently than in his dimension. Because that's the entire thing. Each dimension is technically the same thing. So this goes back even to Dragon Ball Z with the original arrival of future Trunks. Because remember, Frieza and his father showed up. Goku was supposed to show up, kick Frieza's ass, and basically get infected with the heart virus. Trunks believed that he screwed up the timeline by coming back and defeating Frieza, but in effect, he didn't. Because events were already going to be different in that realm that he was in versus his own. Because in that one, there was obviously some major differences. Now, while everything else could have been attributed to that one point, you could say that that's where the dimensions skewed off into multiple possibilities. This is like, think looking at a tree from the ground up. Like you're standing at a tree, staring up into the sky, level with the tree. You're going to see how the branches go out. Imagine the trunk of the tree is basically your timeline, your straight flowing timeline, and each branch is where time or the reality shifted and altered itself into something different. I'm really trying my best to explain this because, honestly, this is how I see it. So, with future Trunks' timeline being extremely different, it's not that. It's not entirely different, it's just events played out differently than in his dimension. So, if he's the trunk of the tree and Goku not defeating Frieza created that, branch, then everything on that branch technically is different from his own because it's skewed off into its own pocket little dimension sort of deal. So, with all this basically figured out, it's physically impossible for any of the events to happen in the Future Trunks arc of Dragon Ball Super. The entire Goku Black saga is BS. I'm sorry! I really hate to say it, but it's true! The entire Goku Black saga in Dragon Ball Super is 100% bullshit. None of it would happen. You're talking about a dimension where Goku technically existed yet, where they defeated Majin Buu, which you could have, but you would have to have some differences. Because first off, Vegeta would have still been there. Unless in this dimension, he was never found to be really good and thus never came back to life after the wish was made with Purunga. 2. Gohan wasn't around. At this point, Gohan would have had his mystic powers unlocked. 3. No Piccolo. None of the other characters were seen in that flashback because they're all supposedly dead, yet Zamasu utilized the ability to travel in time. He basically punctured and fractured a hole in time and space and went to a different dimension, not back into the past, as he claims. So, technically, he did not do anything that they said he did. And a perfect example and proof, mind you, my entire proof of this hangs upon one thing. Omni King. That's right, Zenchan. Or Zenchan, as Goku calls him. The Omni King, the one that cannot be defeated by anyone, the ultimate powerful being. The one that everybody figured the angels were going to revoke and try to kill at the end of the Tournament of Power, which honestly would have been cool, but come on, at that point, Dragon Ball Super had been pretty much going on for a while now. It was time to let it go for a little bit, let it take a breather. It had to catch its breath. But seriously, with the Omni King being able to be brought into back into Goku's time, proves my point. Because the two of them grabbed hands. Time Travel 101 is if you go back to the past, do not interact with anything. That is rule number 1. If you do find yourself into the past, do not step on anything, do not interact with anything, because the slightest change to the past will affect the future. If you so much as break a leaf or smash a twig or destroy a bug, you could effectively cripple the future to no end. We just explained this in the arc. So time travel is an explainable thing, but they're not time traveling. That's the whole thing. They're dimension traveling, which is an entirely different construct. Because when you dimension travel, you can smash shit up to your heart's content because it's not going to affect the timeline. It's just going to create alternate dimensions. Where, okay, in this dimension, this bug was destroyed, thereby killing off all the other species, and then created this. So on and so forth. This is like a gigantic pinwheel that you're seeing from the ground up. And that's what the effect is. So for Zenchan to pretty much be in Goku's timeline would not be time travel, it's dimension travel. I'm trying to figure out a best way to explain this, but honestly, I don't really know how. Okay, no, you know what? Perfect. I got a perfect way to explain this. So imagine going into the future and getting a super powerful gaming system. Like, you managed to go into the future, and you have a return, you figured out a way to do a two-way trip in a time machine. You go into the future, you get the game console, you come back to the past. Because you're taking something that does not yet exist in this timeline, you have effectively polluted the timeline by creating something that's in it that should not exist in it. Therefore, you now have the problematic ability of pretty much polluting the timeline and changing it. So now that gaming console won't exist in the future because you already have it. You could sell that thing, claim it as your own, and thus make a mint off of it, provided it doesn't have any markings or anything else that would technically throw your ass to the wall. But honestly, well, then again, you could just swap out the case if you wanted to, but that'd be kind of stupid. But honestly, you would be screwed at that point. 100% screwed, and you know it. Because now you don't have a device to pretty much that you were going for. Sheldon in The Big Bang Theory explained this when Leonard wanted to go back in time and prevent himself from buying the time machine. It wouldn't work because he would create a paradox. And that is my other problem with this arc. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the action scenes, and I loved seeing Vegito come back because he's one of my favorite characters in the series. But with that issue, there's a problem, and that problem is the paradoxes, because paradoxes would be happening left and right, up and down, like you would not believe. But not only time paradoxes, dimensional paradoxes as well, because dimensional travel would have the same construct as a time travel, only on a three-dimensional scale instead of a two-dimensional. Because time would travel in one direction, it's considered a two-dimensional scale. But since dimensions can pop out anywhere, it's a three-dimensional scale. Thus, you can have paradoxes happen, thus being called dimensional paradoxes. These dimensional paradoxes are technically screwed up moments that happen because something was brought into that moment that should not exist in that moment yet, or cannot exist in that moment, thus creating the paradox. And there you have it. I know it's confusing, and honestly, I don't even know where half of it comes from. I think there's like a part of my brain that's like supercharged and occasionally kicks on, runs for about 3 minutes, and then kicks off. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. Do you think the Future Trunks arc from Dragon Ball Super was really screwed up? Like, more so to the point than anybody's been thinking? Or do you think Akira Toriyama just figured, you know what, I need a filler between the tournament between Universe 6 and 7 and the Tournament of Power. This is going to be it. This will tide them over, introduce a whole bunch of stuff, make it shiny and flashy, have a lot of battles in it. They won't know. I hope they won't know. Let me know in the comment section what you think. And until next time, I'm Andrew Rhodes, and this has been Andrew's Theories. Holy crap, that was a really long one, too.